Okay.
Welcome to this second virtual monthly meeting of PCCB. This will be live streamed to thousands tonight. It will stay on the website a long time. It will stay on the website a long time at their discretion. Our guest speaker will tell us about Penrite Oils, a true Aussie company. Let's deal with the leaders of this evening.
Mr. Chairman, this evening we've got limited numbers because of the COVID requirements. I move that we declare a quorum for any motions that need to be put at this meeting.
Can we have a second? David Jenkins is seconder.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Alan Horsley had earlier moved that the minutes of the May online meeting were an accurate record, and Colin Harris seconded that the minutes were correct. Our secretary, Tim Famillo, is an apology, as is Glad Fish. Tim has nil correspondence worth reading, he told me. So we wish him well on this long weekend. Peter Kerr. Peter, would you like to come and sit and talk about your portfolio, please?
That chair is just out of frame, Peter. That just should go across.
Peter, can you tell us something about what's happening on the competition side?
Well, the competition side is still suspended. However, we did receive a proposal from the Fiat Car Club to run an automated COVID-19 type event similar to a Motorcana, but without any spectators. That event is likely to come on soon, and I'll be in contact with Fiat. We may be able to have a couple of our members enter and sample.
Sounds good. Sounds very good. And what about the French Car Festival?
The French Car Festival can't be run under current conditions. It is suspended really until further notice. We do have a date, but unless events change very much, we may lose that date. And we could also lose it if football and cricket start again, because they will have first call on the ground.
Right. Okay, thanks very much for that. And your other portfolio, of course, is the AOMC.
Well, AOMC are virtually treading water at the moment. They sent me some interesting information today, which is that General Motors Holden's test track is up for sale.
Yes, they sent me a resume of it. Maybe thinking I'm in a position to purchase, which I'm not.
Well, what a great idea. We could have our own ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Neil Griffin has done another sterling job on the financials, which are in talk. So if you need to know anything about our financials, have a look at talk. David Jenkins, would you like to take the chair?
Evening, everybody. Evening. David Jenkins. I'm the social events person. I haven't seen you, many of you, for a long, long time. But things are slowly changing, and we're going to be social again. I have driven my 504. It works, and I think I went shopping in it several times, quite a few times actually. So although there haven't been a lot of social events happening with regard to the club in the last couple of months, there's nothing to stop you getting out in your Peugeot doing one of the activities that we're allowed to do. So I've been out in my car. As far as the calendar goes for now, an events calendar, Hank's Outback trip, deferred Outback trip now begins on Saturday, 12th of September. All being well, and on the basis that everything we're doing complies with the various requirements, and the borders are open and the sun shines and everything else is working for us. Unfortunately, we didn't make Grand Ridge Road, not cancelled, simply deferred. Can't give you a date yet. And there's a few other events that we did have simply been put on the back burner for the time being. We have had discussions within the committee that we may be able to get something fairly basic going by about July, which would probably mean a Sunday drive in the country with morning tea and lunch, observing social distancing and everything else we've got to observe in this climate.
And was that to Yang Yin and Yang?
Yeah, probably. Well, the rough plan at the moment is to have a coffee somewhere like Yan Yan on the way up, arriving somewhere like Yay, which has facilities for those that choose to do their own picnic, or if you want to buy a pie, there are plenty of options. We can do all that comfortably, social distancing, and of course we need to keep an eye on how the rules change. Hopefully it'll be better over that time. And I'm looking forward to getting out there again, certainly before the springtime, and hopefully as early as July. So that gives everybody plenty of time to service their car, give it a polish, and be ready for when we do get out there. And that's what I've been doing. So really looking forward to people, hopefully in July and hopefully in September, Hank. And plenty more activities coming up later in the year. That's what we look forward to. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, President.
Thank you very much, David.
I'll vacate the chair.
That's something to look forward to on social occasions. I haven't been to Yang Yin for a long time. Glenn Hall has excelled himself with a great 32 pages of talk in June. He still needs more articles from anyone about your car, about his sister's car, anyone else's car. It doesn't need to be a Peugeot, but of course we would prefer that to be the case. You will all notice that you received a copy of talk on your email, when in actual fact you hadn't asked to receive it. So what we're trying to do is to send talk to everyone on email, and give them the opportunity. It doesn't cost us, doesn't cost the club any more than sending it to 20 as to 300 or 400. And so let's just see what it's like. I myself think it's pretty good, but I must admit, it is good to get that hard copy one. Now, Colin Harris, would you like to take the chair and talk about what's happening tonight, and possibly give us some insight into who's coming in for the July meeting?
Right. Hello out there in cyberspace. Okay, so tonight we've got Brendan Hughes. Brendan is the National Training and Sales Operations Manager for Penrite Oils. And for those that don't know, Penrite Oils are based in Dandenong these days. And just reading up a little bit of a history on them, they've been just about all over Melbourne, but they've ended up in Dandenong, in fairly large space there for their petroleum based products where they process and manufacture them. Now, next month, which will be July, we're looking at having Marty and Colin Stark, ex-Alpine Affair owner, come along and talk about French cars. And Colin Stark, who had his business for many years, was a fantastic man in regard to servicing vehicles, and serviced many of the club people here their cars. And I remember being recommended to visit him for a service, which I did on a number of occasions. So that's in July. Yet to be confirmed, but hopefully that will happen in July. August, we're looking at John Needham. Most people have never heard of John Needham, but he rebuilds old gearboxes for any sort of car. South Road area, I suppose it's almost South Oakley. So that's hopefully happening in August. And September, a man called Mel McCann, who is a Renault man, but he's going to be talking about the Red X run. October, we won't have a speaker. November, we hope to finish the year with 404s and Blair Healy. And at this stage, nothing is penciled in for December. So, Lael, that's our
Thank you very much,
proposal
Colin.
for the rest of the year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the next committee meeting will be on the 15th of June, and it'll be face-to-face because we will be within the guidelines of 20 to 50 people. Collating and David Isherwood is champing at the bit to get back to collating, and that's on the 24th of June. And the next monthly meeting will be the 3rd of July, again, face-to-face. All above face-to-face meetings will recognise social distancing, as is done tonight. Sanitising was done on all touchable items prior to this meeting. So the backs of the chairs, the door handle, the stair banister rail, all of that was done by myself, so you can see it's a top-notch condition. Masks are a personal decision. As you saw, Peter Kerr has a mask on. That's his decision to wear one, and it's my decision not to wear one. Hawkins Ground features a bull bar in aluminium for a 504. See Lael made the details. There is a 307 for sale in the magazine. There are two 404s from extended storage northeast of Wangaratta. No rust. There's two 505s, one a GTI in Stirling, South Australia, and there are 403 and 404 parts available. Wanted are 407 V6 fuse box and turbo. Also wanted is a 504 wagon and some parts for a 307 wagon. Before I ask Colin to introduce our speaker, I want to bring attention to those who are sitting at home or in the car looking at tonight's meeting. If you want to ask a question relating to oils, Penrite oils, there is a chat box on your screen. I think it's on the bottom right-hand corner. This allows you to either chat or message us your question for the Penrite man so we can relay to them. Colin, would you do the honours and introduce our Penrite man?
Certainly will.
Okay, this is Brendan Hughes. Brendan, I bumped into in Phillip Island about March, wasn't it?
Yes, well, just
And
started meeting.
I was desperate for a Penrite speaker, and there was the man standing right in front of me. So I approached him, and he gladly said yes. So we teed it all up, and Brendan's here tonight to give us a talk about oils and oils. Is that right?
That is right.
Okay. Thanks,
Okay,
Brendan.
no worries, thank you. Okay, thank you. And hello to all those watching at home and the team that's here. So my name is Brendan Hughes. I'm the National Training Manager for Penrite, and I look after our technical team. And tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about oils. I have done talk for the Peugeot Club before, back in 2013. So if those that can remember back that far, you might see a few things the same, because some things haven't changed, but a lot of things have. So hopefully tonight we'll be able to show you and be able to see on the screen there, up the top there, some of the differences there are between oils, and it's a pretty complex business. So I'll start with, I hope we can see the back there. I'll talk a little bit about Penrite as a company. Penrite is an Australian family-owned business. Started back in 1926 by a guy called Les Meekols, and we've been an Australian company ever since. So we service all areas of Australia and New Zealand, and we actually sell to about 50 countries worldwide with our products that are made here, including Asia, USA, Europe. The actually classic car industry in Europe is a lot stronger than what it is here. So some of our oils tend to suit that market, so we do very well. We actually produce one of the largest ranges of oils in the country, and we have something like about 900 SKUs in our portfolio. So it's a lot of products and sizes that we actually have. And for those that aren't quite aware, that we're actually Australia's biggest retail oil company. So that's pretty good that an Australian company is actually still doing well in a very well-dominated market here. Penrite was started by a guy called Les Meekols back in his mother's flat in St Kilda in 1926. And he made his first deliveries actually using wheelbarrow, from what I can understand. So Les owned the company and called it Penrite. The reason it was called Penrite was they used to use Pennsylvania crude, and Right was Les's idea because it was the right oil for the right vehicle. So the company became known as Penrite. Now, Les owned the company up until 1979 when it was bought by John and Margaret Diamond. John Diamond Sr. was a mechanical engineer. He actually worked for Vauxhall in the UK. Originally, he actually developed gearboxes for the Vauxhall, and then he worked for BP, and he came to Australia with helping the Asia Pacific with lubricants. And when he bought the business, he actually worked for a company called Lubrizol, who are one of the world's biggest suppliers of oil. So John and Margaret bought the company, and it's been owned by that family ever since. John passed away in 2006, but Margaret Diamond is still an active person out and about, and still the principal owner of the business. John started with a product some of you might know called HPR 50, because at the time Australian cars were struggling with the types of oils that were out there. They were actually burning up the lighter viscosity oils, and I suppose because we probably relied on what came from the British area. It's a lot colder in Britain, so it's here. It was a lot warmer, and they found the cars were burning oil. So John developed HPR 50, and it actually saved a lot of cars that were on the road at the time. A couple of years ago, we actually bought the Lightning hand cleaner brand, which is another Australian brand. So we actually own that. A lot of people don't actually know that, and the Diamond family still own and run the business today, so they're all mostly actively involved in the business in some way or another. And it's like another family like yours and mine. They have their good points, their bad points, but they're actually very good to work with. So, and we employ about 150 people in our business around Australia, businesses around Australia. So, a bit more about Penrite. A lot of people. The Diamond family actually have their own collection of classic cars. As Colin said, he saw us down at Phillip Island, which we do every year. We do Winton and a few other events with the racing team. But some of the cars that they own, there's a 1927 Bugatti 35C. Another really famous car is Mercedes 540K, which used to be actually owned by the Heinkel brothers. Pre-World War II, and we believe it became part of Goering's fleet during the war. So they're two famous cars that the Diamonds own. And plus a couple other very rare cars, a BMW and an original AC Ace with a straight six Zephyr motor in it. These are a few of the cars that are in their collection they have. They also we have our own Penrite racing team, where we race a Cheetah Mark 8, a Brabham BT16, a Lola Mark 1, which I think a few of you probably would have seen, and obviously we've got a few other cars as well, like Formula Fords, an Elfin that races, and they're actually at the moment rebuilding a Brabham Elfin. So we'll see that in the track soon. Now, a lot of people also know Penrite. I suppose we like to test our products out and make sure that they work well. And I'm sure most of you know we sponsor the Erebus B8 Supercar team. Erebus is actually just around the corner from us in Dandenong, and they're great for actually taking products around there and saying, try this, and they do. So, but basically that car, Dave Reynolds' car, Anton De Pasquale's car, they use exactly the same oil as what comes off the shelf from your local shop. We also sponsor the Honda Superbike team. So not only cars, we're very actively involved with bikes. So, and we sponsor obviously Honda Racing Australia, which Troy Herfoss was the Australian Superbike champion. And we also sponsor Honda CRF off-road motocross team. And we also sponsor Honda Racing in the motocross and supercross, and with the 4-time in a row Australian champions in the supercross. So we make sure our products get used and used to the extreme to make sure that the best products go out for our customers. So we also sponsor Superboats. For those that don't realise, we actually do make marine oils too, and we make actually OEM approved marine oils. So we also have a lot of brand ambassadors around the country that use our products and recommend our products and trial them for us and use them. Some famous ones and not so famous ones, but we also like to sponsor, young people as well and get them into motorsport if that's what they want to do. And we have heaps of them out there that we actually supply with product and some sort of support. So talk a little bit about oils, base oils. It was interesting, I was asked earlier about oils, where they come from. Just for those people that don't know a lot about oils or lubricating oils, that all lubricating base oil used in Australia comes from overseas. What we mine here is not suitable for lubricating oils. So it's useful for other things. It's not suitable for lubricating oils. So all base oils and basically all additives come from overseas, come abroad into the country. So what we pull up out of Bass Strait or wherever it is, it might get used for fuel, but it doesn't get used for lubricating oil. I got asked where it came from. It comes from all over the world. We bring in oils from different parts of the world for different applications. Like we might bring a synthetic from America, a synthetic base from America. We might bring a mineral or a Group 3 synthetic in from Asia. So oil is actually used for a lot of things, and a lot of people don't realise that it is used to make a lot of things. It's actually used to make like plastic chairs. It's used to make kerosene for our jets to run on. It's used to make even women's makeup. Big things. So lubricating oil is a big market worldwide and used for a lot of applications, and probably not all of it's oil that goes in your car or fuel that goes in your car. Just what they get out of a barrel of crude. It's very interesting because I suppose recently with COVID-19, the price of fuel went down quite dramatically. People were ringing us up going like, how come the price of the oil hasn't gone down? What they don't realise is only a percentage of each barrel is actually used for lubricating oil, and the cost of the actual base oil is probably only about half of what an actual oil is in terms of cost. The actual additive packs that go into the oil are much more expensive. But that image up there actually shows you basically what every barrel of oil, what it's broken up into and what it's used for. So, what happens to oil? When they pull it out of the ground, anyone who can remember the Beverly Hillbillies, which I always like to refer to, when it shoots the ground, this black muck comes up. That's what oil looks like when it comes out of the ground. It's black, it's horrible, it doesn't look good, it's full of impurities, and it needs to be refined before it can be used for other things. So, the API, the American Petroleum Institute, break base oils up into 5 groups. Group 1's a mineral oil, which is solvent refined. I'll show you quickly how that's done. Group 2's like a much cleaner mineral oil. Group 3 is basically a synthetic oil, but it's derived from mineral. Group 4 is what's called a PAO, or a polyalpha olefin. And Group 5 is esters, which come from fatty acids and plants, alcohols, etc. So basically when an oil comes in goes through a refinery, the first cleaning is what's called solvent cleaning. And what they do is they've actually mixed the crude with the solvent, and then it's chilled, the muck's taken out of it, and then it's processed through. And that's actually how they do what's called a Group 1 based oil. Now, and up until recently, around the world, Group 1 based lubricating oils were still really, really popular, especially overseas. Maybe not so here. We moved pretty quick in Australia. We liked better things. So it's, but there's still Group 1 used for a lot of applications overseas. It's also used for things like hydraulic oil as well here, in terms of like oils that we use in our lubricating oils for automotive. We basically don't use any Group 1 anymore. Then what happens is to turn it into a Group 2, what they do is they heat it and they pressurise it with hydrogen to actually break away more of the impurities and more of the wax out of the oil, so it becomes a lot cleaner. So that's what we call Group 2 oils, and Group 2 oils are basically used for most of your mineral-based oils these days, and partially for your semi-synthetics as well that are there. Then we go to what's called Group 3, and basically what they do is they heat it up some more and they pressurise it at a lot higher pressure to actually break away all the impurities out of the oil and get rid of whatever's left over in it. It actually also changes the carbon chain of the oil. So you can see that down in the right-hand corner there where it goes from a cycloparaffin to a paraffin. And what they class these oils as, they class them as synthetic. So that's what your normal synthetic oils are actually made out of. It's called Group 3. So Group 4s, they're made in the lab. I won't explain how it's done because it's rather difficult, but it's but they're super pure, and that's what you probably need to remember when you're talking about the high-priced synthetics, that they are super pure. It's like when you make a cake or you're making something, the better the product you put into it, the better results you get in the end. So remember that. And Group 5s come from alcohols, fatty acids, or esters. Esters are super slippery, and they work very well mixed with PAO as a lubricating oil. So that's the 5 base oil groups that are out there. So, and we make oils in most of those groups. So, and just to give you an idea, basically your mineral oils will be made up out of, say, Group 1 and Group 2 oils. If you have a semi-synthetic oil, it'll be made out of probably Group 1, Group 2 mixed with Group 3. If you have a full synthetic oil, it can be just Group 3, or it can be a Group 4 and Group 5 mixed together. You probably don't find a single oil made straight out of Group 5, which is very expensive. So it's that's how they're made up. Now, let's talk about some of the additives that go into oils. Can't just have nice base oil and put it in a bottle and say that's going to do your car, because that doesn't cut the mustard these days. It did back before 1920, but it doesn't now. So when you look at the breakup of an oil, what's actually in an oil, a lubricating oil that you buy off the shelf, etc., and it'll change product for product depending on the application. It can be up to probably 75% base oil as a norm, and about 25% of its additive that's in the oil. So, and in those additives, there's a lot of different things to actually make the oil do what it's meant to do. So you can see there, we put in things like performance additives, VI improvers. For those who can remember back to the early 60s, we probably didn't have multi-grade oils. VI improvers were the thing that actually gave us multi-grade oils. So we had a summer and a winter grade oil in the one oil, rather than having to change from, say, mono 30 in winter to mono 50 in summer in the cars. So some of the chemicals that are added to oils, obviously these days, someone told me before about we're talking about detergents in oils and high detergents. Nearly all new oils these days are high detergent. They need to be to keep the engines clean. Another big thing they put in oils, and especially in diesel oils, are dispersants. Dispersants are additives that actually encapsulate the dirt or whatever, the soot or the particles that are in the oil, that the impurities in the oil, and they hold it in suspension until the oil's changed. So again, we're talking about oil being thick coming out of cars. When the oil gets to a stage where the dispersants are fully used up, then what happens is then you get what's called oil thickening in the car, and then it'll you build up sludge, and then you don't get proper lubrication. So very important part. Other things, extreme pressure additives we put into like gear oils. We put things like friction modifiers into some oils. They also in ATFs and other types of products. Oxidisation and rust inhibitors, very important, because you've got oil in your car doesn't mean it's not going to rust. So oxidation inhibitors stop oil thickening, basically. So it stops the oil from actually oxidising in with the air, especially these days with the amount of exhaust that's pushed back through the system of the car to make emissions. Anti-wear agents, obviously, that's always a good question when they're talking at car meets, like things like how much zinc's in an oil, how much do you need in an oil to make it worthwhile, to make an anti-wear agent. So always a good talking point. And things like foam depressants, obviously we have detergents in there, we need foam depressants to stop them from turning into a Mr. Matey bath inside. And obviously things like pour point depressants, which are put in some oils to make them pour better at cold temperature. And obviously VI improvers, which give us multi-grade oils. And there's different types of VI improvers you can get. There's cheap ones and there's better ones that last a long time. So, an example of how an additive pack for an oil is made up, that'll basically show you up there, the different portions that are used. And it's not exact, it's a rough guide to what's in an oil, but it shows you that modern oil is not just base oil or refined base oil. They have a lot of things put in them to actually make them do their job properly. So, I'm going to talk a bit about viscosity next, which I talked about last time we were here. It's always a good talking point because a lot of people don't understand viscosity. They sort of see it as, they see the numbers and then they've got an idea in their head of what it should be, and it's not right. So what is viscosity? Viscosity is a fluid's internal resistance to flow. So that's how you describe it. And oils generally have viscosity. So we see them on the bottle, and it says 5W30. And normally I'll ask people, does everyone know what the numbers mean? What does the W mean? W actually stands for winter. The first number is what's called a cold cranking viscosity of the oil. So basically tells you how thick the oil is when it's cold. And to give you an idea, a 5W oil will pump at minus 30 degrees Celsius. If we got that cold in Australia, I'd fly to the moon. So it's not going to happen. The second number in the oil is what's called the operating temperature viscosity. And basically that's how it's measured as a viscosity when the oil's at 100 degrees Celsius. So most cars these days, we run around about low 90s, high 80s in terms of their heat, maybe a bit warmer, maybe a bit hotter. Cars actually back in the 60s and 70s and 50s would run at about high 70s or 80s degrees. So actually ran at cooler temperatures. They run them at more hotter temperatures these days because they're more efficient, hotter temperatures. So the operating viscosity of 30, if you think of it as a 30 as the last number, it's probably the equivalent in thickness of a mono 30 that we would have put in a car in winter here in the old days. Or you think of it as if it says 20W50, the 50 is probably what a mono, about the same thickness as a mono grade 50 was back in the 1960s. So just to give you another look at how they work, we've got three, say 10Ws that are there. You've got a 1030, a 1040, a 1050. Basically, they'll all be about the same thickness when they're cold, thereabouts, but as they heat up, right, the 10W50 will keep its viscosity a lot longer than, say, a 1030 would. So in terms of the oil film thickness, the oil film that you have, a 50's got a lot more oil film to it than what a 1030 has. 1030 you might get better economy out of. In terms of protection for the motor, you'll do a lot better with a 1050 in that case. So they'll all pump the same when they're cold, but they'll be different when they're hot. And if you go the other way around, when we have a look at there, it shows you that at 100 degrees, it's actually a you got much better film thickness out of the high viscosity oils. Oils also too dissipate about 50% of the heat out of a motor or more. So the better the film thickness of the oil, the better it will disperse the heat. Oh, oops, go back. I'll just give you an example here. I'll show you this. One of the things we did, Penrite made Penrite famous as a company was doing like extra 10. So where most people had a 1030, we had a 1040. And most people had a 1540, we had a 1550. Where we have things like 1050s, 1560s. And the reason it works is because you keep a better film strength in your oil. And you can actually do this as a little test at home. If you actually go and put your fingers in some cooking oil, rub them together, your hands, your fingers will get warm. If you actually do it like that, your fingers will get warm with nothing on them. If you go and put some lard between your hands or thicker thing and rub your fingers together, it won't get as hot. The frictional heat is one of the things that wears out a motor. So it makes sense that if you keep the film thickness in the oil, that the engine will last longer. The other thing that it actually benefits is most oils, especially ones with viscosity index improvers in them, they'll actually shear as they get old. It's called shearing. What it means is they lose their viscosity. So an oil that might start as a 10W40 could end up as a 10W20 by the time it's finished its service life. Now, a 10W20, a lot of cars that probably use 1040, it's probably not doing them a lot of good. Whereas if it was 1050 to start with, it might shear to a 1040 or a 1030. It's a much better protection for the car as the oil gets on. And as I said, you'll get what you pay for with oils. So you'll get what you pay for with additives that go in them as well. So let's talk about some of the industry bodies that are out there. So that's the way we're directed to make oils these days. The main bodies that are out there, obviously, the API, the American Petroleum Institute. I'm sure you've all picked up your owner's handbook in your car, especially if you've got a Japanese car or a US car, source car, and it says like use an API, blah, 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 oil. If you've got a European car like a Peugeot, it might tell you to use an ASEA standard oil. So I'll talk about those in a minute and what they mean. Japanese obviously have this Japanese Standards Organisation. There's ILSAC, which is National Standards Committee, and there's obviously the OEMs who have their own specifications for oil. So they're all out there, and there's different specifications for different products, which is why we have a lot of different products in our range. So what I'm going to talk about first, I'm going to talk about the API. Now a little thing up top of the screen there showing you maybe what you might see on a bottle of oil. It tells you the specifications of the oil. So we'll start with the API, and it might say it's an SNCF grade oil. So does anyone know what that means? Okay, easy one. The S stands for spark ignited. So you see the S come first. It's basically a petrol-based oil. The C stands for compression, which means it's basically a diesel-based oil. But you can have a petrol oil that has a diesel standard, and you can have a diesel oil that has a petrol standard as well. The N is what actual year spec it is, or what the latest spec is. In this case, I've used N. N was the newest standard. up until the 1st of May this year when it became SP. So in CF, you can see there, or the latest standard in compression oils is CK4 and FA4. CK4 is truck-based, mainly truck-based oil, but a lot cleaner than older oils and a lot lower in some of the impurities in it as well, like it works for trucks with DPFs and emission control systems, and FA4 is basically a lower viscosity version with a low high temp, high shear. So a bit hard to explain those, but over the years, oils have improved, right? As they do, they get a different spec or a newer spec. Back in the early 1960 or something, I think it was, the SA might have come out somewhere around the late 50s, early 60s. And I think before that, they used to say use MS grade oils or multi-grade super, I think it used to be called. So it's, you might see it on the old Holden blocks. They used to have it stuck on there in the early 60s. So the API, as I said, they improve over the years, and they're all different standards. So the API also license their products and license their products. So we have a lot of products that are licensed by the API. Again, if you open up, you've got to say it's Toyota. I know it's in the Toyota handbook. If you open it up, you'll see the API stamp in there, and it shows you the same ones that are up there, and it'll show you what the service classification is that they need for the oil, and that's a standard of oil. So if you look at the API, there's a lot of, I spoke briefly before about zinc in oils and anti-wear agents in oils. When oils were SM back in 2006, there was phosphorus limits introduced for XW30 oils and under, right? Which means you take phosphorus out of the oil, you took some of the zinc out as well. Not all of it, but you took some of it out because they actually operated on lower phosphorus levels. So on oils over XW30, like 540, 1040, 1050, there was no change in them. And ILSAC, which was another board I had up there, ILSAC are basically tied up with API, and they give you fuel economy parts of the oil. As of May 1st this year, they introduced a double standard on ILSAC, where you had ILSAC 6A and ILSAC 6B. 6A is for the normal oils, which would be your XW30 to XW20 grade oils, and 6B applies to oils under XW20, like XW16, 8. That's how low we can go with viscosities these days, if we need to. And we actually have a 0W16 oil, and we can actually do 0W8 if anyone would take it. If car manufacturer would actually specify it, so we'll do it when we need it. So also for those that maybe have modern cars, you might like using E85. You're best to use an oil that has a ILSAC GF5 grade if you're going to use it as an everyday driver. Now, next one you'll see up here at the top there is the ASEA rating, which you'll see A3B4, and basically they're pretty simple. The European one, A stands for petrol engines, B's light duty diesel, C's catalyst compatible, and D is for heavy duty diesels, and that's how they're ranked. So most of the European manufacturers are using the ASEA rating on the oil, so it's becoming more prevalent in Australia, and especially I suppose if you've got a newer Peugeot, you're more likely to see a specification asked for that corresponds to an ASEA rating. A lot of people say to us, why can't you make one oil? Does the whole lot. And it's a really common question. People just don't understand. It's not like 25 years ago when you could probably have, you had a workshop, you could have 2 oils that did most cars. These days, it just doesn't happen. The workshops have got to carry multiple oils, and they'll buy oils in to do cars, to do certain cars. So, and there's an example up there. I used the ASEA table up there, and just to quickly explain, the different ASEA rules is A3B3, A3B4, A5B5, C1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up there, right? But they all have different chemical limits. So for that specification, so we can't make the same oil, right, with the same spec because they've got a different chemical limit, and we have to stay within those limits for those products. So it gives you an idea of what the different ones are that are up there. So, just to point out, if someone says I'm putting a A3B4 oil, it's also C3, you can't have it. Chemically, you cannot have that product. So there's ones out there that claim it, but doesn't happen. So now, Japanese Standards Organisation, I won't go too much into this, but if you ride a motorbike, you might have, please use JSOMA in it. And the reason it says JSOMA is means so it's compliant with the clutch and engine. Like a lot of bikes have the engine oil is the gearbox oil, and they're a wet clutch setup. So if you have an oil with a full of friction modifiers, like for a modern petrol engine, you'll sit there and go nowhere with the bike because it'll just sit there and spin. The clutch will spin. So they're normally non-friction modified oils, and JSO is MA1, MA, and MA2, and JSOMA, and they're the ones that actually work in wet clutches. So have oils that do those, and JSOMB, basically for your automatic scooters and automatic type bikes. So, car manufacturers don't just rely on industry standards to with oils. They also have their own standards, and they have what's called OEM approvals for their products. So where we can, we go and get the OEM approval for the actual vehicle, from the brand, and there's companies like Mercedes have their own OEM approvals. VW with Dynamite they have one oil that does every car in their portfolio. So one oil does VW, Audi, Skoda, Seat, Lamborghini, Bentley, Bugatti, and Porsche. So very good product, but you have to be, if you don't use the one that's OEM approved, that's licensed by them, then they won't pay warranty, or they're not likely to pay warranty on it. So it's other things we have to do these days as an oil manufacturer, is have approvals where we need them. So, and we do up there, and also we have API licensed products that there's good quality assurance for the product. Just to give you an idea on how they perform against new oils versus old oils. The spider graph on the left there shows you an oil from SM grade, or basically our A3B404, against the current 16 grade, and it shows you just how much better that the oil, probably 12 years on, has become. And it's like it through API is exactly the same. They're about 30%, 40% better in most areas where they're measured. So the oils over time, not only if cars become better, like in how they do things, they become more economical, they become more efficient, but some of the oils have had to develop as well, and they have over time. So, and then I talked about car companies having their own specifications there. If you look at the one on the right there, it's a Mercedes-Benz 229.5 approval, which our HPR5 has, and we're comparing that against the current ASEA standard oil, which is the current European standard. It just shows you how much better the Mercedes specification is. So it's we have an approval for that 229.5. So hopefully we're better than the industry standard in that case. Now these aren't just my graphs that I pulled out and drew up to make it look nice. They actually come from the world's leading additive supplier. So they're the ones that gave it to us. So I get asked, we asked a question before today about low SAPS oils, or about oils to go in my car. Hang on, I saw this oil. I didn't know you actually made those. A lot of people talk about like low SAPS oils. SAPS stands for sulfated ash, phosphorus, and sulfur. And basically, it's designed to have lower emissions. So on newer cars, what they fitted they started fitting like what's called a diesel particulate filter to cars. Now, there's nothing wrong with the diesel particulate filter, because what it does is, you notice these days that trucks don't smoke. They don't have black smoke coming out of them because the particle filter catches it, and they're more efficient, but the particle filter catches it and doesn't let it go out in the atmosphere. Why? Because it's carcinogenic. So most cars, nearly all diesel cars now have got them. Toyota are about the last to introduce them in 2015 on Hilux and Prado and Land Cruiser. So they're out there. They don't cause a lot of issues, but they also, the engines that take them do take specialty oils as well. So, a bit about the market in Australia these days. It's not just, we have a few brands out there. Someone showed me a picture the other day, and I think it was out in Carlton, and there was like 8 cars in it, and they're all Australian. Mate, and I'm thinking like, you think like, not these days. You drive down the road, and there's like cars from all over the world out there. So Australia has a very, very large amount of brands that are sold here, especially even compared to overseas or into the US. We sell about 1 million cars here per annum. We got up to about 1.2 a couple of years ago. We'll come back to probably under 1 million this year. The US sell 15 million cars a year, right? And they've got less brands than what we have out there. So there's a lot of new vehicles out there, and they're very different, and they take different products. So that's one of the reasons why we have such a big range. So, and even though it might be the same car, it might take, when they go for a model change, it gets a bit different. And here I'm just using the Hilux as an example. We're pre-215 Hilux. Hilux has been the biggest selling car here, probably for the last, I think they say last 4, but it's probably the last 6 or 8 years. It's been in the top 3, and it's actually been the biggest selling car for at least the last 4 years in Australia. But the older cars pre-DPF took, pretty standard grade oils, normal type oils. Post DPF, they take on mid SAPS oils to comply with their emission systems. And as we say at Penrite, right oil for the right application. So you can't just have one oil and throw it in every car. It just doesn't work, right? The same even with old cars, it doesn't work because different cars from different manufacturers took different products to them. They were closer, but some of them took different products. So we say right product, right application, and that's how we manufacture products for the business. So obviously you say, how the hell do I find the right one that goes in my car? Now I'm probably thinking you probably don't all drive the Peugeots every day of the week. In some cases, some people might, but what oil goes in my everyday driver, what oil goes in my car? You go on our web page. We've now got our Rego check. If you've got a normal Rego, it doesn't do club Regos, so you can actually just punch your registration in, same for Victoria, and bang, it'll tell you what car it is. Or you can use a drill down, or you can even put in, I've got a 1995 Peugeot 504, or 1975 Peugeot 504. So for the people that have got the older ones, on that web page too, we have a BV&C guide, right? So you can actually go there and you can look up your older car. So if you're rebuilding an older classic Peugeot that's out there, I think we probably cover most with product that's there. So Penrite's one of the only companies that does a BV&C range. We're actually the only company in Australia that does a BV&C range for older cars. So I was showing one of you guys before about the app on the phone. So if you don't have a computer, or you don't hang around on the computer all day, or you're out in Super Cheap or Repco and you think, what was oil for my car? Download the app, it's free. It's on for Android and for Apple, for iPhone, and it updates by itself. You don't need to do anything. It'll have all the latest data on it. It'll have all the latest products on it. So then you can go to the shop and it'll tell you how much your car takes, how much you need to do that servicing job. And it'll tell you the engine oil, the coolant, the brake fluid, the gearbox fluid, the differential fluid, the power steering fluid, and anything else that we get information for that vehicle.
So it's a Penrite app.
Yes, called the Penrite Product Selector app. It's free to download, and I suggest if you're a bit of a worker on a car, a bit of a tinkerer, and you find yourself in the automotive shops all the time, download it. You'll certainly benefit from it. It's also too got we've got the Ryco and Westfield filters on there as well, so you can it'll tell you what filters your car takes as well. It's there. So I did a bit of a classic car guide for you guys, so I'm happy to email this out to all of you. So going back over most of the old bottles, the product that are there and what they took in them. I'm going back to 1920s with Peugeot. So we'll show you them. So I'll email that out to Colin and he can distribute it amongst the rest of you that are here. So and even down to some of the newer ones or semi-new, semi-classic ones. As we get to the newer ones, you'll have to go to the product guide because we'll start getting into some bit more complex product that's out there. So most of the early cars actually Peugeot aren't too bad. They're quite easy to in terms of products. They don't take a lot of different ones, but they're there and we have them available. So said Penrite, we're Australian owned and operated. We've been around since 1926. So we're 94 years old. So hopefully in 6 years' time again, we'll make the big 100, have a big party. So I'll probably see you guys around about that time again. So thank you very much for the night. If anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Sorry. Go on. Yeah. Over and above all the specifications that you went through, I don't go in and buy whatever. I go in and buy myself two things of HPR 10, HPR 15 and 30. So is that just a Penrite generic sort of number or?
No. There's difference between the old oils and the classic oils there's a lot of different specifications. As you get to newer oils, HPR 10 is like an SM grade oil. So it's a high detergent oil that's designed for modern engines, right? Same with HPR 15, it's the same, right? HPR 30 is an SM grade oil, so it's a 2006 grade oil, right? But it suits a lot of older cars. It's backward compatible with a lot of older ones. When you get back to oils like the Shelsley's is what we call an ultra low detergent oil, right? So the cars that it goes into are pre-1950s cars, and basically cars that probably didn't come with an oil filter in the first as well. A lot of them had very primitive oiling systems, so you can't run high detergency oils in those cars because they are carboning up as part of the process of making the engine run properly. So what it does is it cleans them up, and then they don't run properly. So
you're going to forward to Colin those last little lists that you.
Yes, I certainly will.
So
there's nothing saying you can't use a newer oil in an older car. Like a car in the 60s, there's no problem using like a newer type oil, but probably if you've been using an older grade oil in it beforehand, you might find it might clean it up a bit too much. They do their job. So as someone asked a question before about with diesels, like if you do have a diesel or a Peugeot diesel, you put nice clean oil in it, and you notice it goes black within 100 Ks, it's doing its job. Don't ever worry about an oil that goes dark in a car because it's doing its job. It means it's holding the impurities in it, right? If it's still completely clean after 100 Ks, 150 Ks, and you think like, geez, well, I've been in there 2,000 Ks and it's like the same colour it was when it went in.
It's not doing its job.
Empty it out and put something else in it because it's probably not doing its job.
Are there any other questions?
I noticed up there.
Alan, you have
sorry.
sorry.
Can I ask you a question about additives, re diesels? I understand Penrite recommends a fuel additive for diesels as a consequence of having a particular filter. How often would you use that?
Oh, look, just with modern cars, because of the injection systems on modern cars work under high pressure. So, and diesels, even though they're a lot better than what they used to be, and they're lower in sulphur, etc. I think that was one of the reasons why we couldn't have some Peugeots here in the early 2000s, was because they couldn't run without fuel, because it was operating at such high bar pressure, like the common rail systems, that they can flog out the injector. When the injector doesn't spray properly, what happens is then they don't run properly, and then you can overfuel the cylinder and actually kill the motor. So injector cleaners probably, I'd put injector cleaner, probably recommend halfway through a service and after a service. A standard injector cleaner. We've got ones that are more potent, which you can use probably every 10,000 Ks, and maybe the one you're referring to is what's called a DPF cleaner, right? Now, DPFs, if you drive it, if you get the engine hot and drive normally, right, you won't block them up, right? But if you're Mrs. Jones, who's been sold a car, oh, it's a diesel, gets bloody 50 miles to the gallon, and she takes the kids to school, which is 2K around the corner, and goes to the shop and buys a coffee with her girlfriends and then drives them home, the thing doesn't get past cold, then you're likely to have trouble with the DPF, because they burn when they're hot. What a DPF cleaner does, or what our DPF cleaner does, it actually lowers the burning temperature of the soot. So when they do a regeneration, DPF is what's called a regeneration. When it does a regeneration, it actually burns the soot at a lower temperature. That's how they work. Right, so but new cars, especially ones with common rail systems, it also lubricates the pumps as well. But they're very clever, the additives that they use.
You just described my wife's diesel.
Alan,
So take it down the freeway.
Did Brendan answer your question?
He did.
Yeah.
Okay.
My recommendation would be take the car out down the freeway.
Yep.
Right. Hold it one gear back and do 100k an hour. So it's doing 3,500 minutes of diesel. And do it for about 15, 20 minutes, and you'll find that'll heat it up nicely. And you might clear out your DPF if that's an issue.
Dan, you had a question.
I did. I noticed up there for 505, the engine was recommended a 15 and a 30 weight. And I just wondered that in the manuals they specify 1550 oil for the gearbox as well,
Yes.
but oils may have different packages in it that may not protect the same.
Daniel, that's common for some car manufacturers. Australian car manufacturers in the 1970s, I think if you had a Valiant or a Falcon, the 3 on the column, whatever it was, they took engine oil. A lot of the British cars in the 60s, they took 1030 grade oil in the gearbox. I think Hewlett's gearboxes took 1030 as well, the early ones. They actually worked with HBR30, believe it or not. The most common one these days, I think you'll find might be the later model Rodeos, or RAs and that. They actually took 1540 in the gearbox. I think a Isuzu D-Max still does. Takes an engine oil in the gearbox. So engine oils work very well as gear lubricants. Gear lubricants don't work well as engine oils. All right, so
So in that guide there, so if the manual says use a 1550 in your gearbox and it's published 30-year-old data, but your app says use this weight gear oil, is there different additive packages?
There's what's called a SAE viscosity for engine oil, and a SAE, which means Society of Automotive Engineers, viscosity grade for gearbox oil as well. So you'll find a 10W40 is probably the equivalent of a 7590 gearbox oil in terms of thickness.
Yeah. So the final piece of that, I guess, is some of the older gearboxes might have brass shims or something like that. Some of the newer might cause any issues there?
Modern gear oils might have what's called non-aggressive EP additives in them, so they don't affect white or yellow metals anymore. I know people worry about it, but it's like they don't affect. The actual additives we use these days, right? They're called non-aggressive additives, and they have no effect on white or yellow metals. and that was really it was something you had to watch for, probably in the 60s, 70s, 80s. The gear fluids had a lot of EP additives in them, and a gearbox would generally be what's called a GL4, gear work 4, and differentials use like a GL5, so the gear loading is a lot higher.
Are there any questions on the chat?
Nothing comes through that I can see.
Right. Colin,
I had, when I first got my Peugeot 407 diesel, I took it to a bloke in Richmond who was a Peugeot serviceman, and he said, after I'd been there a number of times, that I should get the gearbox oil changed. Now he said that automatic. He said the Peugeot dealers say that the gearbox oil never needs to be changed.
Built for life, yes.
Built for life. He said it needs to be changed because one day your gearbox might just pack up because the oil hasn't been changed.
He's right. Most people, most car dealers don't want to hear this, but built for life means built for life warranty.
right.
Right, so there are built for life, like Textron 6 GMUs, right, has an operating life of 400,000 Ks, according to them. So, that's built for life.
Which car was that?
A GM,
Oh, yeah.
right, and they've been using
Okay.
Textron 6 since BE Commodore.
Right.
Right, so it's, and the same with like ZF transmissions and that, they're somewhere around about change when needed. So, yes, if you do have a car, depends on what you do with it too, how you drive it, right? If you tow with it, whatever, then yes, it's beneficial for the cost of doing a gearbox, an oil change, change the filter, change the fluid, right? And put new fluid in it. It certainly doesn't hurt them, right? Even though that the fluids are designed to last for a long time in those applications.
And I took my other car, which is a 407 two-door, which has gone to God, but when I took it to a reputable Peugeot dealer, and I said I wanted the gearbox oil changed, they basically said, we don't do it.
They might not.
And in automatics.
Sorry?
And in
AMB.
Yeah.
Automatic remanufacturers and then.
Not yet.
Once upon a
You
time,
are one of our customers.
once upon a time, the car club went to AMB
Yeah.
for a presentation.
Yep.
And we came away with one message: change the gearbox oil every 150 K.
Yep.
And it cost you $300.
Yep.
You go out to AMB, because I did.
Yep.
And at 8 o'clock, and he says, go and have morning tea at the cafe, and you come back an hour and a half later, and it's all done.
Yeah. So and they're dead set right. So it depends on what you do with the car, how you drive it, what you do with it. Like you've got a Land Cruiser and you tow a 3-ton boat with it, or caravan all over Australia. Well, you don't be changing the fluid probably regularly, every 80,000 Ks or whatever. If it's like, but if you don't drive the car hard and just does some trips here and there, does a bit of cruising, you probably don't do enough Ks to change it too often anyway. But it certainly doesn't hurt them. I can show you. I actually could have brought it out here. Some samples of Dexron 3 that's been in the car for 40,000 Ks. The difference between that and a new one, and you'll think like, yeah, you will change in your gearbox.
One of the most common faults on newer cars are sticking valve bodies, and I'm pretty sure it's probably got something to do with that at times.
CCC seem to have that problem, so if you drive a Volkswagen,
Personal experience there is
DSG.
the Peugeot dealers will charge you about $100 for a litre of oil or something like that, and it needs 7 or 8 or 9 litres of the thing that's got to be run up to temperature and overfilled and all that sort of weird stuff. So
Of course it does.
finding the right grade oil for the right gearbox is a
We
challenge.
do, yes, and we do most of those. And it's like, you know, I know that person, you know, I know my own car. I think the dealer charged about $120 a litre for the gift fluid, right? I can give them enough to do front diff, rear diff 3 times over, right,
Yeah.
with the same spec.
You ask them
Or-
what it is and you just get a part number.
Yes, so
You
that's,
don't get
that's,
a get a
that's,
spec.
look, that's, everyone, you have the opportunity in Australia. You don't, not saying there's anything wrong with the car dealers and service, but they know their vehicles. Certainly don't have a problem with them. They do what's normally right for the car. So, you know, for what they're told to do. But you have the option in Australia, you can go elsewhere.
Brendan, I think we learned a lot tonight.
We have.
And if I could ask Alan Horsley to say a few words.
For Brendan's $1 million, thank you. Very, very useful information. Peugeot owners, please accept the block 404 red.
Thank you very much.
But thanks very much.
No worries, thank you.
Great.
Can I just get you to, you know, do the proper handshake,
All right.
elbow shake, and we'll get a, in fact, if I come round here a bit, I'll be able to get,
I should be in it as well. Can you get that in?
no, you're too fat. Yeah, you stay there. And I'll get our little Peugeot, no, I won't, I'll get the Penrite flag in the back.
Absolutely.
There we go.